Hi, thank you for joining me today. It's Geraldine from the Paper Puffin Studio, and today I'm going to show you how to make this folded tower card. There's lots of examples on Pinterest, so this is the one that I've made. When you turn this card over, you can see there's a place on the back to write a message, and the card stands up beautifully on display. It also will fold flat and fit into a regular sized envelope for mailing. I hope you enjoy this video. If you do, please remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Now let's get started. Let's begin by reviewing all of the pieces you're going to need to build this card. You'll need a piece of your base color measuring 5.5 inches by 8.25 inches. You'll need 2 pieces measuring 2 inches by 5.25 inches. For your coordinating cardstock, you'll need 4 pieces, each measuring 7/8 of an inch by 5 3/8. You'll need 2 pieces measuring 7/8 of an inch by 4 1/8. You'll need 2 pieces measuring 2 1/8 of an inch by 5 3/8. And 1 measuring 1 3/8 by 4 1/8. For your designer series paper, choose 2 coordinating patterns. The first one, I need 4 pieces, each measuring 3/4 of an inch by 5 1/4. Of the coordinating designer series paper, I want 2 pieces measuring 3/4 of an inch by 4 inches, and 1 measuring 1 1/4 of an inch by 4 inches. Now we're ready to do the scoring on our base of our card. So taking the longest edge and placing it along the top, we're going to be scoring this at 1 inch, slide it over to 2 inches and score again, and then slide it over to 3 inches and score again. Then I'm going to take my paper out and turn it around so I can repeat that on the other side. So placing it again back into my trimmer and scoring now again at 1 inch, 2 inches, and 3 inches. Now we're ready to do the cutting. So taking that piece of paper that we scored, I'm turning it now with the 5.5 inch edge along the top. I'm going to be lining this up at the 1 inch mark, and I'm going to be cutting from this first score line through the second and to the third. So I'll start by doing that. So I'm lining up my cutting blade at 1 inch and going to 3 inches, then stop. I then am going to be cutting from this score line, which is essentially the 4th score line, through the 5th and to the 6th score line. When you line up your trimmer, you're going to be putting your blade at 5 1/4 and cutting down to 7 1/4. I'll now scoot the paper over to 2 inches and repeat that again. So cutting from the 1 inch to the 3 inch mark, which is the first score line, to the third, lift your blade, move it down to 5 1/4, and cut from 5 1/4 to 7 1/4. Now to make this easy, I'm taking my paper out and I'm going to turn it around and repeat that. So lining it up again at the 1 inch mark, cutting from 1 inch, which is the first score line, to 3 inches, which is the third score line. Lift your blade, move it down to 5 1/4 and cut from 5 1/4 to 7 1/4. Then scoot your paper over again to 2 inches and repeat. Cutting from 1 inch down to 3, lift your blade, go to 5 1/4 and cut to 7 1/4. And so you'll see I have these cut lines made. I'm now ready to fold and burnish. To fold and burnish, I'm going to orient my paper like this, and I'm going to be folding a valley first, and then a mountain, and then a valley. And I'll use my bone folder to make those edges nice and crisp. I'll turn my paper around and repeat. So a valley, a mountain, and a valley. Again, use your bone folder to make all those edges nice and crisp. At this point then, you will have a shape that looks like this. Now, to make those little pieces here, now to show you how this will get folded, you're going to push in on these 2 pieces and push in on these 2 pieces. And then when you fold this all together, this is the shape that you will get. I'm going to be choosing to make this the front of the card. So this is how it's going to sit. I'm now ready to start assembling the card with the Designer Series paper and the mats. I now need to glue all of the Designer Series paper to the corresponding mats. So these pieces are going to go on those long strips, and then I just match up these. I'll go ahead and glue those in place and pick up there. Now that I have all the Designer Series papers attached to their mats, I'm ready to attach them to the base of the card. To do that, I'll just flatten out the card, and these long thin strips will get placed here and here on both the front and the back of the card. If your paper has a direction, just be mindful of that so that the directions are in the same position. So now that I have the long strips attached to the sides on the front and on the back, I'm ready to attach these 3 pieces, and these will get attached like this. The larger piece in the middle and the other 2 pieces on the top and on the bottom. Again, just remember, if your pattern has a particular direction, you're maybe going to want to make sure it's oriented in the same direction. So I'm taking this piece of paper, which we cut earlier, and I'm going to be using the Very Versailles stamp set. I'm going to stamp the words in crumb cake, and I'm going to stamp these leaves in Bermuda Bay. I'll then show you what I have. I finished stamping the images I want on the front of the card, but before I attach this piece to the corresponding mat, I'm going to run it through the embossing machine using the 3D subtle folder, just to give the paper some texture. I've also stamped the sentiment that I want on a scrap piece of paper, and I'm going to be using the smallest die cut from the Stitched Nested Labels dies to cut out this particular sentiment. I'll go ahead and do that and pick up there. So I ran this vanilla piece through my embossing machine. I then attached it to the mat. I had the other piece of vanilla. I left that plain and attached that to the mat. This one will get attached to the front of the card, and this one will be on the back so you can write a message on there. Then I took this little piece which has the sentiment that I die cut. I've placed some dimensionals on the back, and I'll be using those dimensionals to pop it up on the front of the card. I then will put some little embellishments on here and show you the finished card. So here we have the finished card. Everything has been attached, including these little embellishments, which are the brushed metallic adhesive back dots. When you turn the card over, you see the back has a place to write a message, and this card stands up beautifully for display. It also fits into an envelope quite easily by just folding it flat. And you can see with the envelope, you would just place it inside and it fits perfectly. This is one version that I made, and I made another version with just different colors and different designer series paper. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.